The talk tonight will be about relationship. Seems to be the topic around which revolve most discussions, meetings. Counselings, whatever label one may give to getting together and talking. And it probably is because to live, to be alive, is to be related to each other and to the things around one, one's work, and natural things. And the problem that permeates human beings is the difficulty or the lack of relationship with each other and with the things around one. Does one see, as one is listening and looking, the incredible importance of clear relationship, of clarity in relationship? And does one see the fact, if there is no clarity in relationship, if there is confusion or deception, that then life is awry, is in conflict, becomes problematical. If one truly realizes the utter importance of clarity in relationship, not having good relationship or bad relationship, but clarity about how one is related, if one sees the utter importance of that, then one will begin to look in one's moment to moment into relationships. During the last discussion period, which was held here 2 weeks ago, much was said about the expectations that we have of other people and of ourselves, and the problems that are caused by expectations we have of other people and of ourselves. The problem being that other people fall short of the expectations one has of them, or just don't come up to the expectations, are different, don't conform to one's expectations, and the disappointments or fears or anger that is triggered by this not conforming to the expectations. In commenting about this, some people said, why can't we drop our expectations? Can one drop one's expectations? And one person said, if I have no expectations of myself and I can just love myself, then I can also love other people. We want to look at all of these things with great precision, like taking it under a microscope or magnifying glass, this matter of expectation. And in looking and listening even though one's personal life will come into focus, can one not just take all this personal, but see what is general in what is being talked about. And with that, maybe to go beyond the identification with, this is me, my problems, my expectations, and see what is general in human beings expecting things of each other and the consequences of these expectations, what the nature of the expectation is, of the expecting mind. And so get away from the personal into what is shared by all of us, what is common to all of us in the functioning of this mind. When one says that one expects things of another person, let us take the case of a person one is living with in a family situation. What does one mean? One has expectations of this person. Is it what one will do to share the work? That can be something very matter of fact if it is discussed, agreed upon, and one can occasionally or periodically review it. Does one do what one has agreed to do? This needs to present no problem. Or in this expecting something of another, is there the idea, the image one has of this other person, what this person should be like, how that person should treat one, support one, help one, psychologically, emotionally, how that person should look and act, behave, speak to one. In having these expectations, is there any relationship to the expectations, to these ideas, to what this person is actually like? Or does one impose ideas, long-held fantasies and images, dreams, upon the person one happens to live with, and constantly comparing what is inaccurately observed or skimpily observed with this fantasy that one has nurtured all one's life about the ideal mate or friend? It's quite clear, isn't it, that if one approaches another human being in terms of fantasies one has of the ideal mate or friend, that there's bound to be conflict and difficulty and disappointment, anger, or just a constant tension. And the inability to see the person as he or she is actually talking, acting, living. If one sees the utter importance of watching this relationship as it is actually occurring, can one find out for oneself that as long as there is the sense of me and my expectations, my wants, my needs, that one cannot approach anybody without expectation of what this person will do for me or not do for me. that as long as there's the sense of me and my needs, wants, desires, what I deserve or should have or shouldn't have, as long as this is the central focus within oneself, one cannot see or relate to anyone or anything without wanting to be in conformity with one's desires. One sees in the other person only what one wants of that person, or what that person is not able to deliver or do for one. I recently discussed this very seriously with someone who observed very carefully in daily life and said, I don't look at anything without bringing it into some kind of a relationship with what I want, what it can do for me, or the person can do for me, or won't do for me. It's a shocking realization that as long as there is this self-centered focus within one, which is within human beings, we have been brought up this way and brought ourselves up this way. Everything and anybody we see in terms of ourselves, in one way or another. There's the inability to just look and listen and see without relationship to oneself. That relationship to oneself is of little relevance if this focus is not active. This inner focus of me is not active. Then maybe there's something clarifying in the vision. One sees for the first time what something actually is, or someone actually is. So is it possible to discover in one's need to inquire into what relationship is, how one is related, to discover this constant self-focus without any judgment of it, without any idea that it is good or bad, that one should drop it, be done with it, overcome it, which is the same self-focus, only in a different disguise. What is important in this life, which is a life of mutual relationship, is not what is discovered, namely selfishness, which is the first thing that comes into view, but that there is looking and listening without a focus of judgment, condemnation, approval, no focus, no position. That something new comes into being, which is not conditioned by our value system, it's not conditioned by anything. A seeing without judging. Is that possible? Is that humanly possible? And to touch and face whatever the seeing reveals. To face it without any deception, self-deception or other deception. In other words, in total honesty, frankness and openness, to see this operation of self. How when it is there and operating, it cannot but see other things, other people in terms of what it wants and expects. And therefore hides and disguises what things and people actually are. If one doesn't carry toward them one's expectations. Does one see how utterly important it is? So that there be a total renewal in relationship, or not renewal, but change, transformation. Coming back to what someone said in the last discussion period, what needs to happen is that there be love of the self, that there be love of myself. I can't love anybody else as long as I don't love myself. But what is the self? Can there be love, or should there be love of the self? What is the self? Other than this continuation of expectation and want and fear, this inner focus of all the memories of what one was done to one, what one wants to be, what one wants to become. Is it necessary to love that, or is that just another idea of self? What is love? Can there be love as long as the self is expecting and wanting and muddling or distorting relationship by its inability to see clearly? What someone close to one actually is from moment to moment, without imposition of any fantasy, good or bad. If there's insight, realization of the self in action, what happens? Does one begin to love it, or is there a change in relationship? Can only be a change in relationship if the self is clearly seen, without any illusion, without any deception, or any compulsion to either love it or hate it. Somebody mentioned how in whatever relationship there was always the expectation that the other make oneself feel worthy, that one was looking for one's own worth through the relationship with someone else, expecting the other to establish one's own worth by being cared for or loved, or being made felt important by that other person or by other persons. Does one know this kind of thing? how one tries to establish one's own worth through the approval, love and care of others, the support of others, by others. And as this person discovered the constant failure, the impossibility of doing that, and therefore the constant feeling of unworthiness, what is one's own inner worth? Is it an idea? Or is it the feeling that things are going well? Things are going well. What does one mean by that? That other people approve of one, that one has success, that is palpable, showable and seeable by others. With that goes tremendous insecurity, because that success can also stop or turn into failure. Other people may not recognize it. Other people may ignore it or not think of oneself as worthy, blame one for things, or have images of one that one cannot comply with, that one cannot conform to. What is this thing of inner worth that we talk and feel so much about? Is that supplyable by other people? Or if it is supplied, is it reliable? To be relied upon tomorrow? Will it be there tomorrow? It may not be. And then where is one? In the depth of a depression or disappointment or anger? Can one watch that during the day, this craving for being made felt worthy by others? What is it? Does it not have to do with this inner focus of self that we talked about? The idea of myself, a love of myself, which one wants to have confirmed by others, that one is good and this and that. If the sense of self is not there when one does something that is clearly in need of doing, and there's the energy and the enthusiasm or love to do it for its own sake, is there any need for being made felt worthy for it? Or is the doing itself sufficient unto itself? Whether somebody says you did a terrific job or not, is that important? Or does it come important the moment one reflects upon what one has done, makes a thought out of it, and then the idea of other people should approve of that? Then thought takes over, where direct action left off. What is one's inner worth, I'm wondering? Other than an idea. Around which thought can circulate endlessly. Please bring it up in meetings or in another discussion period if this arouses some new questions or insights. Doesn't this thought or idea of inner worth inevitably bring about dependency on others? And I don't mean the dependency that is naturally there by some people growing food, other people bringing the food to market, other people running a supermarket so that one can buy one's groceries, this kind of interdependence I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the psychological dependence for having one's worth established, which may be fictional idea. If one walks by a lake or a canal and sees a child drop into the water and dives in and tries to pull out that child, was there any idea of inner worth in doing that? Or does that happen because it's clear what needs to be done? What the situation absolutely demands to be done? And then maybe afterwards, in reflecting upon it and people showing their admiration for one, maybe one is mentioned in the newspaper, then comes this idea of one's worth, and then the attachment to that idea, to that incident, to the image of oneself. But honestly, a lot of people have reported that they didn't even think of themselves at a moment like that. There was no question of being a hero. It was just doing what was so clearly called for. And the doing is complete and sufficient unto itself. Can one live like that in relationship? Not demanding establishment of one's own worth by others? Just living in a relationship which is clear from image, free from image? Other than what we said at the very beginning, agreeing on what needs to be done to carry out a household or a job efficiently, intelligently, sharing the labor. But other than that, trying to find out who we are in the presence of each other, rather than what we should be like according to our past fantasies and ideas. It would be such a different way of relating with each other, constantly coming upon images and seeing them and letting the seeing take care of the newness of relationship. But not craving for that newness in relationship and letting that become an idea, but seeing how old and jaded our relationship is, loaded with expectation or old grudges, old memories which one will not drop. Why not? Is it just out of habit because we've been taught not to drop memories about each other? sometimes people come in to talk, maybe together, and both parties, both friends or husband, wife, will say the difficulty is that I always have to give in, and both of them will feel that way. We have so completely different perceptions of how we live together. How can we get together if we have these totally different perceptions of each other? Can those be shared? And can this feeling, I always have to give in, I always have to be the one who has to, and so forth and so forth, can that be not taken for a truth, but examined whether this is actually so? Or whether this is an old feeling dating back to one can't even remember how early childhood, that one always felt taken advantage of, and now projects this onto a new relationship where it may or may not be so. How one expresses one's misgivings or grudges to each other, can that itself be listened to as one expresses it, and not taken for granted as the expression of a truth, but wondering about it, whether this is really so or something carried over? If one sees, as we started out this talk, if one sees the utter importance for human beings, not just in the family relationship, but in global relationship, to clarify it, not to blindly relate in habitual, automatic ways, but to see how it actually takes place, how one doesn't see, how one only acts out of habit, and not to a flesh and blood human being, but to what one thinks this person is like because he or she has been like that for a long time, or because one wants that person to be in a certain way. If one sees the utter importance of that, one will examine everything that happens in a relationship in a new way, not take anything for granted, but look at it and listen to it as though one listened to a recording of oneself, which is how we talk. We talk like records. We may think the other person always says the same thing, but so do we. We're all alike in that. So what is that state of quiet listening? Or a quietness of the mind that inquires and wonders and takes everything in a spirit of wondering, of doubting, of questioning. It's an openness that knows nothing, and is therefore able to look and listen freshly to what is happening so automatically, so mechanically in our relationship. Which is a real humbling. I don't mean a deliberate humbling, but a humility that does come into being when one sees how one lives. Not due to other people's fault, but it so happens. There's a koan. We have talked about it in years past, which is about a woman. It's actually based on an old Chinese legend about a woman who had been promised as a child to a mate, to a husband, but she was in love with another man, and because she didn't want to marry the man who had been chosen for her at an early age, she eloped with her lover. They went to a faraway country or province, had children, and after 5 years, so the legend goes, they became homesick, both of them, for their native land. Maybe a little guilty too about leaving the parents. And they returned to see the father. It was just the father there who had tried to arrange this marriage. And when the husband came to meet the father and said, "I've brought your daughter back, wanted to visit with you," he said, "My daughter has never left. She is home in bed, sick. She's been sick for the last 5 years, ever since her lover left." So then when the woman joined her husband in meeting her father, it is said that the two women, the sick one and the returning one, joined and were one. Became one again. And this short little koan says, Say, that's the name of the woman, Say and her soul are separated. Say and her soul are separated. Which one is the real one? Or which one is the true one? One could ask, which is the true me? The sick one? The obedient one? Or the rebellious one? The loving one? The romantic one? Or the married one? The motherly or fatherly one? Which is the real me? Which is the true one? We play so many roles. And as long as we play roles, we are as many separate entities as there are roles. And it's taken for granted that we have these different roles. Sometimes it's put, I wear different hats, whether I'm in business or whether I'm in church or whether I'm at home or as a father or mother. These are all different parts of me. Does it have to be like that? Is that something inevitable that is taken for natural and unavoidable? The business self and the religious self and the home self and the sick self and the lover self. Which one is the true one? What is reality? What is truth? Irrespective of role or image. What is the truth of oneself, irrespective of image? When the minute one chooses one, there's already separation, there's already limitation and narrowness. And expectation and fear and wanting that goes with that particular image. Do you see that? Does seeing or insight have anything to do with role playing? Or is role-playing revealed for what it is, without any judgment? As one goes through a picture gallery, painting gallery, and looks at each painting very attentively, not so interested in who painted it, that distracts from looking at a painting, whether that man is famous or that woman is famous or not, immediately detracts from really seeing the picture, and then moving on, a seeing that's not there to aggrandize or be in the know. It's simple and humble. Wants nothing but look and listen to what's actually there in front of one or within one. Someone commented on this koan and said, when you realize what is real, see it. Not think about it and have an idea about it, but see it. When you realize what is real, you will see that we pass from one shell to another, like travelers stopping for different lodgings. This role, now another role, the next moment this image comes up, that. As one person said in the last discussion period, from one expectation to another, from where does one see that? From the idea that this is a bad thing to do, a painful thing to do, or does one just see it? Traveling from one shell to another, one mask to another. In seeing a mask, does it drop? Not because one wants to drop it, but because it's gone. The seeing dissolves it. Can that happen? Does it happen? Revealing that without a mask one is really nothing. Nobody. Except what's actually there. But that all our doings are just role-playing, thinking that one is that and trying to maintain it or overcome it. If a mask really drops and there's an insight that one is nothing, really nothing, nobody, does this immediately become a frightening idea? Or can it just reveal one's unity with everyone and everything? Not needing to carry any expectations to anything or anyone, because there's no one there that needs to do that. And does one even need a shell? One can question that. The shell of a role, of a mask, a pretense, an image. Not to take it for granted, to see that it is there, but one can question whether it has to be there, or whether there can be life in its fullness and wholeness without that. In hearing someone say that, does the idea come up, I must get rid of image? People tell me this after a talk. You said in the last talk that we shouldn't have images or that we should get rid of them. Can one watch how such an idea solidifies in the mind? Because when it is questioned whether one can live without it, in hearing the question, one habitually, if there's no attention, gives the answer, yes, it can, or no, it can't, or it should, or shouldn't. One constantly answers questions rather than leaving the question alone, nakedly sitting there with no answer. Not making a should or a shouldn't out of it, a yes or a no, but wondering. What is the real me? Maybe that's a false question. Maybe there is no me. What is truth? What is reality? Irrespective, regardless of all the images I've accumulated of myself and to which I cling for dear life. And I want others to recognize them, so I feel worthy. Is that all there is to life, these shells? two shells can't relate to each other, they can only create friction. And to step out of the shell, that means great vulnerability, great sensitivity, possibility of being hurt without defense. But isn't that coming to life? To feel hurt, to feel pain, without immediately retracting into the shell? So that there is beginning of real relationship with what is actually going on, inside and out, even if it is wrought with pain. Or joy. There is a poem that concludes this koan, which goes something like this. It's not a specific translation. Ever the same, the moon among the clouds. Ever the same, the moon among the clouds, or the sun among the clouds, for that matter. It's amazing when one takes a trip by plane. If the plane goes high enough, far enough, there's the sun. No matter how thick the layer of clouds, it's just there. It says here, ever the same, the moon among the clouds. Different from each other, the mountain and the valley. How wonderful, how blessed. Is it one? Is it two? This moon above the clouds, or the sun above the clouds. Can it be that clarity of seeing which does not attach value or judgment to mountain or valley, high or low, depression or elation? It's just seeing whole, what is there, without any expectation. And when expectation arises out of inattention, can it be seen at any moment without judgment? Without desire to overcome it, get rid of it, or justify it? And there may be this sense of wonder and blessedness. In which oneness or two-ness are just irrelevant concepts. we will end here for tonight.